All right, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 7 of our Stockpress Podcast. I'm here again with Ian Parks, and today we're going to speak of a very interesting topic as a follow-on to episode 6. Today we're going to talk about feedback loops, right? And how do you create them in order to understand whether you are or you're not delivering a great customer experience. And if you are, how can you continue down that path? If you're not, how can you course correct to make sure that you're delivering the most value? So let's start there, Ian. What are we looking to understand when you're creating feedback loops in general?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is, and it's something we talked about last time, is that matching the expectation. So, I think creating that feedback loop as soon as possible is really, really powerful. I'll talk about some other things that are a bit more material in a second, in terms of user feedback, capturing that, and looking at usage, if it's in a kind of self-serve platform. But yeah, I think it's about asking questions. And what we're looking to understand is, number one, like I say, was the expectation met in terms of what people thought they were going to find when they got there? And actually, if it does, great, fantastic. We've got that feedback loop. We've found out, that they've had a great experience. Obviously, the next big thing is why. Like, always asking why as part of that feedback loop is massively important. But we know that there are going to be these folks that actually might not find that value. And actually, that's really, obviously really important for us to understand as well. So, I think in terms of understanding the positive and negative side of things, time to value is something that we talk about a lot, especially in self-serve models. How quickly are people having that aha moment that, yeah, this is the right platform for them. They've chosen the right way to kind of go about that buying decision and found what they were looking for. But similarly, if we're looking at time to value and people just aren't getting to value, you've got to be able to create those feedback loops to understand why. And it is a bit more nuanced than that. It's not just, are they at value or are they not? You've got to create feedback loops within that cycle to say, well, actually, are they not seeing value at all? Or are they seeing some value, but actually they need a bit of help to get there? So I think, when we're creating these feedback loops, it's not just a black and white yes or no question. Are you finding value? Are you not? And then going, okay, well, they didn't, and then moving on. It's like a little bit of that element of, well, how can we start to break out that kind of experience that our customers are getting when they first come into the platform, so we can understand, actually help them along the way. And I know one of the things that we wanted to make this episode about really was kind of those things that you can create action around. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about the different types of feedback loops we can create? Because I think it's important to back that first question up with, well, actually, what can you do and how can you go about creating those loops in the first place?
So my short answer there is going to be hated by everybody listening to this, including myself. And thinking through the different types of feedback loops, the hateful answer is it depends, right? Because it depends on the business, it depends on the type of product, it depends on how hands-on your team is, the client is. But in my mind, if I would just make a big summary of the type of feedback loops that you can create, it's pretty much the 3 P's. Feedback loops around the people, around the process, and around the product, right? So, and I think this is just me personally. I think in stages. I'm a list guy, so I think in stages and in lists. So to me, it's like one step after another. So I think that feedback loops, basing those feedback loops on that baseline of people, of process, and product, it also depends on the stage and the process that you are. And that person, are they a new employee? Are they an onboarding? Are they a senior and seasoned sales rep? Have they've been there for a long time? Is it a marketing person? Is it a product person? Is it, and the list goes on and on. The process is, this company, as my prospect, in a discovery stage, right? Is it our first demo? Is it our third demo? Am I talking to procurement? Am I negotiating? Am I renewing? So it really depends on the product, on the process as well. And then the product, similarly to the person, are they in the first like couple of months of implementing the product? Are they renewing? Are they like in the thick of it and just hire a couple of people? And are those people onboarding themselves, or are they just executing via projects? Is it Q4 that is typically like planning season, or is it like think of it Q2 execution season sort of thing, Q2, Q3? So it really depends on a bunch of different things. But to me, feedback loops are incredibly important because that really just adds more context to what you're imagining that's happening. It's like, of course, you're thinking that your product is awesome and your process is awesome and you have the best people. So you're going to have the best clients and everybody's going to love you and everybody's going to love that process. Ideally, more oftentimes than not, people are going to love that, but you are going to have bumps along the way, and that's perfectly fine. It's just understanding, is that a little bump that is uncommon, or is that a very big bump that is causing your experience to, or is causing the customer experience to suffer, right? Yeah. I'm going to just put a very, very specific example, bugs on a product right now. Right. So it really depends basically or based on these sort of the 3 P's mode that I talked about and the stages that I also went through. How do you use the feedback given throughout these processes to just improve the overall customer experience?
Yeah, I think you've got to use it with a great deal of honesty. And I know that might be a slightly strange way to answer that question, but I think it's true. It's like, I think you put it really nicely is, we can all think things are great, and we can all, make lots of assumptions around like why people do what they do. But, the only real way to look at these things and to go about it in the right way is ask. So, number one is like we'll ask for that feedback so that we can actually hear what people are saying. And then, whether that's onboarding steps that we can enhance, whether it's, help center stuff that we can work on, whether there are just things that aren't making sense to people that are coming into the platform, even though they make sense to us. Like, creating these feedback loops is creating moments of honesty that keep us all honest about delivering that best experience in the first place. So, I think it's a pretty fundamental part of feedback loops is like actually absorbing it and taking it in. And that's the number one way that we would use, feedback loops, especially where it might be a customer questionnaire or it might be, a scoring system within the platform. I think as it relates to usage, that's the other feedback loop that we're really concerned with is, can we see that product data by customer, by user and know that people are going in the right direction? Because that's perhaps the most powerful data and the most powerful feedback we ever have is, are people using the platform itself? And some people don't like to answer questions. They like to, have their actions speak louder than their words. But if there are no actions, then equally that is a feedback loop, and we need to understand like why are they breaking down at that point. So I think, in terms of how do we use feedback how do we use feedback loops to enhance the customer experience, again, is like just have the ability to be able to track what's happening in your own platform so that you can see where people are getting stuck or people are, thriving through the experience and really pushing on. But that said, I think, this is a lot about having those moments with people in the first place. And a lot of those early moments around the brand and around that kind of customer experience are created at, that sales stage. So I think probably a really good way to close out the episode for today would be to hear about you talk to us about the role of sales in terms of capturing the sentiment around customer experience as well, because, I think so much of creating customer experience is done at that point in time.
Yeah, for sure. And here I'm gonna give a big shout out to two people that I admire a ton, that I worked with in the past, and they're both two great coaches, that have coached a bunch of HubSpot folks and a bunch of non-HubSpot folks. And of course, I'm talking about Rick Roberge and Carol Mahoney. And that is incredibly relevant to that question, because they were the ones that taught me, it's like, sales never stops. And it's not about the selling. It's not about the selling. It's about the experience. Like, so what I think about sales is, like, it's not just the sale itself, it's what happens after that. And think about a restaurant. You go for, or anything for that matter. You go for the experience, like, hey, the recommendation, you go for the food, you go for sometimes the price, right? But you go back based on the service that you received, right? So I think that's the role in sales never ends, because you have this very important responsibility to ensure that what your product does is actually going to deliver value to the team that you're partnering with. That's why I don't like to call customers. I like to call customers clients, because customers is a one-off transaction. Clients is a mutual beneficial relationship, right? So I actually used to follow up with clients, and this is something that they taught me back then, with just fun things like, hey, are you rich yet? Hey, we spoke 3 months ago. Did you end up buying that boat? Right? So it's just keep it fun and keep your client engaged from the sales side, because you were the one that gave them that initial expectation. And if something is changing, it's like, what is your responsibility in partnering with other people inside the organization and maybe outside the organization? If you have a partner model and you have people just helping out with the implementation and just the usage of the product itself, I think it's just very important. Just like checking in your clients, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, once a quarter, depends on the cadence, and not also depends, or depending on the client, also depends on the cadence itself. But never leave a client hanging, because when you purchase something, very seldomly do people like being left hanging. And that is just my philosophy. Yeah.
No, I love that. And I think that element of responsibility is a really strong theme that everyone should really think about. Like, this is a responsibility. We're saying what we think people, what we believe to be true to people, and our responsibility is to follow that through all the way to the point that they become a customer, which I think then is about from experience to that measure of happiness. So I think maybe next time when we go on to do episode 8, that's where we can focus our attention, is let's go from the experience to happiness, and actually what it means to have happy customers, happy clients in an ongoing kind of way. So I think let's revisit that next time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it happens. I mean, to me, happiness is expectations minus reality.
Love it.
And I think that is very important. Very, very important. I actually purchased a piece of furniture, and it's been 2 months, and they always just change the delivery date, and it's starting to piss me off. So my happiness tanked.
Yeah.
So it's very important to just follow on and make sure that you keep your clients happy for a mutual beneficial relationship. And with that, we are a wrap. We'll talk about that happiness component in our next episode.
Sounds like a plan.
Bye.
Bye.